welcome to everybody this morning and to this session on multi-location meetings. Hello from me, Philip Griffin in Waterloo, Belgium, and good morning to Maj-Britt Sandberg in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Good morning from Copenhagen. We're really pleased with this collaboration, as always, Philip.
Absolutely, it's great to work together again. We're really happy that MPI Belgium and MPI Scandinavia could come together again for this session. You'll pick up as we go through some references to Beatles, and you'll see why as we go along. The opening music was very poignant, and looking back, yesterday seems a very different world. But we're facing a new world, but with increasing optimism. So that's something that we should bear in mind. This is the first of a two-part program. Today, an introduction to the concept of multi-location meetings, and in the new year, when circumstances first present an opportunity, we will follow up with the second part, the practical part, where we will meet together in separate locations and put the next layer on this. Now, it may be a long and winding road, but the meetings industry is starting to adapt, and in 2021, business events will not return to the way they were in 2019. In this 9-section, sensory-rich and collaboration-powerful session, Mark Cooper of IACC and Mike van der Weijver of Mind Meeting will take you on a journey.
Thank you very much, Philip.
That journey, well, let me continue, sorry. Well, Maj-Britt, you can pick up the next bit, perhaps.
Well, I could. If you had told me a little bit before, then I would have had the script before me.
Okay.
What
No
we are
worries.
doing is we're introducing Mike and Mark and taking us on this journey. And what we could do is that we could welcome them by saying that where do we see the industry coming? And if we go with my words, we would go improvise, adapt, overcome, and smile. So that would be my words. What would be yours, Philip?
My words would be, our industry continues to adapt. And I'm happy about that because we are adapting and we're adapting very quickly to getting that going.
So, and if we go to Mark.
For me, rapid testing ahead of entry to events is very exciting.
And
great.
introducing Mike.
I can do even shorter than 5. My reason for optimism is my grandson. Because he adapts and he thinks of new things all the time. It's very easy for him to consider something that's already there as being completely different from what we see. So the biggest reason for optimism is what children can do.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you. A little bit of optimism. Let me preface this session with just a little more information before you guys kick it off. The journey starts in 2019 when everything seemed comfortable and predictable, and projects into the future to provide solutions that can help put you back into control. In this session, you will appreciate the differences between a multi-location meeting versus hybrid or virtual. You will appreciate the importance of thinking differently about your meetings in this VUCA world. Now, VUCA will be explained to you, but it stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. You will be introduced to and immersed into a participant world where you experience different participation and collaboration techniques. And at the end of the session, like peeling an onion, you will appreciate each and every required layer that needs to be carefully planned to create an excellent multi-location experience for our business events. This is an interactive event. We want to get you involved. You will have the opportunity to get involved. There will be some breakout sessions. We've also planned some fun polls for you to get your feedback on the journey. And there will be some opportunities for you to ask questions. Those, please put your questions in the chat box, and those we'll pick up as we go through. A couple of other housekeeping things. We are using Slido this morning, I believe. Mark, or not?
We are indeed.
Excellent. We are using Slido this morning, so if you haven't already downloaded the app, go to slido.com and download it. The code, which you will see put up, is IACC MPI, all in caps. And for a better viewing experience, once the presentation starts, set your Zoom screen setting to side-by-side speaker, and that will give you a much better view of what's happening on the screen. But without further ado, let's hand us over to two other countries. We have Mark Cooper of IACC Meetings in the UK, Stratford-upon-Avon. And we have Mike van der Vyver of Mind Meeting currently in Taipei, Taiwan. What could possibly go wrong? Gentlemen, all yours.
Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you, Brit, and thank you to MPI Belgium and Scandinavia for allowing us this platform to talk a little bit about multi-location experiences and meetings. This is not a product, this is a belief. This is a belief that we can stage meetings over multiple locations, but from belief, action only comes when we have confidence that we can indeed stage multi-location meetings. So Mike and I will be taking you on a journey over the next 75 minutes or so of various discussions using different formats. This is not a multi-pod meeting, this is a webinar, but we want to start to play out some of the concepts, maybe in terms of the design, the content, the collaboration that would be or could be part of this type of meeting. So, enjoy the ride. There will be some different approaches that we will take throughout that. And as Philip said, we will use Slido right at the beginning. We'll have a fun poll. I can make it even easier because technology moves on, right, Philip? You can just simply use your camera on your phone and take a picture of one of those beautiful QR codes that are on the screen now. It should take you straight to the browser and straight to our first poll. So what is our first poll? Well, let's make this fun. It's early morning, it's midway through the week, so we all need to get a smile on our face. Let's transport ourselves into the bosom of our family. And if we were to describe our family as a culinary experience, what would that be? Are they going to be that barbecue-esque, sort of authentic, straightforward, indoors or out, rain or shine, you know, they're going to be there every time? Or are your family a little bit Mexican, a bit like a taco? Easy to handle, but packed with a surprise every now and again? Or are they beautifully French? And I'm not going to try and do the French accent because I will do it a complete injustice, but are they beautifully spoken? And of course, always right. Are they a bit like street food? A little bit scary, but behaving in a way that actually we all feel really comfortable with at the end of the day? Or is it that Michelin star, poised, elegant family that we all look forward to going to visit? Elegance and include those elements that no one maybe have experienced before. And last but not least, are they a little bit fiery and also a little bit unpredictable? So let's take a look, and I'm just going to flick between my screens to be able to share that with you.
So Mark,
Okay.
Indian only a little unpredictable.
Okay.
Maybe that's why it's getting few votes, because of course India is totally unpredictable.
But then where isn't at the moment, I guess. Yeah, I do like the fact though that we've all got that member or members of our family that are capable of creating a wee bit of a surprise when the family get together. Isn't that what makes families beautiful? And one or two there that have got family in highfalutin places as well. So we better be a little bit, posh in our outward speaking today, Mike. I'm sure we can manage that. That barbecue feel, one or two there that will be out there come rain or shine. And if it's anything like today, it'll be a little bit of rain. Okay, well, perfect. Let me pause on that one, come back, and let's get back into our presentation today. So, first of all, I'd like to move us into our first session. And again, remembering this is all about the concept, let's get a little bit of a grounding in there. Let's look, first of all, and make sure that we understand the differences between a hybrid and a multi-location meeting. Because if we get the fundamentals right, we can build upon that. And we've got some great minds, both from the technology side, from the meeting professional side, from the venue side, who are joining us today. Do set that chat box on fire, because I'm sure you all have a lot to add to what Mike and I is going to be sharing today. But first of all, using the chat box, we would like you
First of all, to get into the first session, Mark, with the appropriate music.
Could you warm us up, Mike?
Help, I need somebody, help, not just anybody, help, you know I need someone, help. Very appropriate at this point in the meeting's business, I think.
Although you're absolutely right, although none of this audience are going to need any help. So we are going to ask you now, of this image and layout that we've got here, is this a hybrid event? Is this a virtual event? Or is this a multi-location event? Let's set the chat box on fire.
Okay, let's see what we're going to get.
Are we seeing Mike? Everybody getting it? We're getting a few comments.
Yeah, we're getting the first comments. We're getting some hybrids between some of the designations that we have, like hybrid multi-hub.
No. So let's make this really clear then. Is it going to be virtual? Is it going to be a hybrid, or is it going to be a multi-location, multi-pod event? So we've got 3 choices there, but it sounds like you're getting 1 or 2 through. We're not going to dissect it just at the moment. We'll move on to the next one if everybody's ready to go through to that one.
The majority here say hybrid
multi-pod. Okay.
This is your second, right, Mark?
This is the second one. So again, let's start again on the chat box. What type of meeting is this one? You can see the numbers increasing, Mike, getting 1 or 2 through. Any early signs of how we feel this one is playing out?
Here, everybody is unanimous. Mark, everybody says that this is hybrid.
This is hybrid, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're starting to sharpen our minds. And last but not least, you probably saw one subtle difference there. What are we heading into here?
So the choices are again?
Virtual, hybrid, or multi-pod, multi-location, however you want to talk about it.
Okay. So the virtual is flooding my screen on the right-hand side.
Wonderful.
I have a totally virtual chat box.
Well, I've got absolute confidence in our audience that we are there. But interestingly, at the beginning, you're completely right. Virtual is that one single place, presenter-led, broadcasting out through a cloud video service to your virtual attendees in many locations. Hybrid is pretty simply, in our terminology, a single live event which is taking place with presenters, with your audience, with your attendees, and we have that ability for virtual attendees to come and join us. Of course, we were enjoying hybrid before we got into 2020, and to go back again, the concept of multi-location is really straightforward. We've got multiple live events that are taking place. And, you know, there are, when we look at multi-location and we look at those diagrams of the interchange of communication, you'll see that it's far more complex, and there are different levels within even a multi-environment event where you have got, for instance, one-way rather than two-way traffic. So you may well have a master live conference taking place and multiple small live events and gatherings where they're still there in person, but they are a part of listening to the content and the delivery and having their own interchanges. When you take it up a level or two as well, where you are actively engaging and participating all of the live groups, and actively participating in and collaborating with all of the virtual attendees as maybe what you call a virtual single group, then you've got, from a technological perspective and a production perspective, a lot more moving parts. And we're going to touch upon the concepts of production and other areas of design and content and facilitation as it relates to these different scenarios. But well done, everyone. That's great to be able to move through that first area. And I feel like we've got that good grounding. So now we're going to move into our second part. And Mike, I would welcome your introduction into session 2.
Okay, here we go. Listen, do you want to know a secret? Do you promise not to tell? Whoa, whoa, closer. Let me whisper in your ear. Say the words you long to hear. I'm in love with you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay.
I've never had such a great backing singer, Mike. The standards now are incredibly high. So we're very shortly, Mike's going to take us into our first of our group sessions, but I would like to tee up this next section, which Philip alluded to it right at the beginning, the concept of bringing a multi-location event together, or indeed hybrid or any of these, is like peeling an onion. It requires many, many critical layers. So first of all, let's see in our groups, I'm going to ask you to break into groups. We would like you to vote on what is the most important element when it comes to a live or a multi-pod meeting. Is it number one? Is it the production? Is it, you know, in terms of the biggest changes that we will see? Is it the video capture and the relay between live locations and possibly in between virtual attendees? Or is it the venue? Here we're going to think about aspects such as the spaces, the food and beverage offer, the quality of acoustics and lighting, AV support, conference planner support when you're dealing with multiple venues. Think internet structure and other tech, you know, so it is the venue, the one that's got the most radical change and the most critical in terms of a multi-location event. Third, is it the content? Is it what we can achieve content-wise? Has it affected what we can achieve? Has it changed? Can we achieve different things that we couldn't do in a live event? There's an interesting conversation. Or is it limited or expanded? And the fourth area is our collaboration and design. How differently do you have to think about approaching these elements, and you know, how different are the vehicles that you would choose or the platforms that you choose for connection? So 4 areas. What are the core elements for a successful meeting location business event that require the most change from 2019? 1, production. 2, venue. 3, content. Or 4, collaboration and design. And I'll hand over to my friend Mike to
Yes.
the next session.
So what we would like to do, everybody, we would like all of you to make sure that your cameras are on, because we're now going to ask you to go into breakout rooms. And there, it's really much easier for everybody to communicate if you can see each other rather than having just the voice. So in those breakout rooms, in the next 5 minutes, you're going to get 5 minutes to discuss and come up with an answer to the following question. Which of the 4 elements that Mark has just outlined, in your view, has gone through the biggest change compared to how we did meetings before? So as we compare 2019 to 2020 roughly, which out of those 4, production, venue, content, or collaboration design, does your group feel has gone through the biggest change? We'll go into the breakout room shortly. 30 seconds before the breakout is over, you will get a voice telling you, or a sign in the screen telling you that you are 30 seconds from done. Then you will be brought automatically back into this plenary. And we'd like you then to type up your answer in the chat box like you did for the Slido poll just now. Okay, so Sophia from the direction booth, could you please get everybody into...
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Katinka.
Hi, Brigitte.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm gonna switch you from screen. Okay, that will be better.
Anybody have a first strong point about the different changes you think we went through?
I think the most important thing is still the content, but the biggest change I think will be the technical setup and the production.
Yeah. I think also for the venues, for example, the well, I don't know how temporary is it, all these safety measures for the hygienic safety measures. So I think it's a big change, but how long it will stay yet, it's a question.
For me, also the technical part is the most changing at the moment and the most challenging, because at the different location, all should be synchronized. So I think it's the most challenging now, the production part.
Brigitte, for you?
I know the technical part is very important, but first of all is, of course, the content. The way you produce now is different than when you do live events. And that's especially in question of timing. You know, to get people engaged, to get everybody connected. The way you do it, your script, that's the very, very important actually. Technical actually come at the end when you know what you want to reach and how you want to do it. And yeah, then you have so many solutions, I agree. But for the moment, our challenge is to beat all the IT technicians coming up with whatever there is. But I think, yeah, there is the concept, the content, the way you do it, it's very important.
Yeah, that's very true. Felicia? Oh, we don't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
No, I can hear you. Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't hear you.
I can hear you.
Well, it's the same as you said, that no one knows for how long we will manage these changes, and it's very important that the techniques works, and so, and it's a big change for everyone to manage all the and not go on routine, or what you say. You know, your live events, it's easy now for many, but the change can be difficult and hard in the beginning, but I think later we will get used to that as well.
Sure.
Yeah. I think for the organizers is also the big challenge to upgrade the skills to be able to manage all these new technical things. And Brigitte, as you said, like we are competing with a whole other sector, the coders, programmers, everybody who was actually very far from our profession. So
yeah.
Yeah.
But anyhow, if you read whatever article or comments on it, the hybrid will be the new future. I think it will be a mix of both lives. We all want to meet again, that's for sure, but I think a lot of companies will think twice if everybody will travel, if the budgets will be there, how to connect people. We can reach much more people. So there are quite some advantages too that we have to use. And yeah, so it's a learning process, that's for sure.
yeah, definitely. I see we are almost
Yeah.
over. So see you back in the venue.
Bye.
Bye.
the breakout rooms, very good. So those of you
Still have a number coming in, Mike, I think.
yeah, we'll have the first, we have the first results. One group says collaboration and design, the second says design. Another group said production, Mark?
Yes.
Well, it's too short to come to a consensus. We only had one person explaining.
Yeah.
A majority vote is, a majority is perfectly okay this morning, Martin.
Yeah.
Okay, so technical setup and production. Welcome back, everybody. Great to see these coming in quickly. Production and meeting design. So yeah, definitely a split feeling there too of equal importance, Mike.
Yeah, so very clearly, none of the groups have chosen venue or content, Mark.
Wow, okay.
Does that surprise you?
Well, we actually did discuss that in our group. I think we stayed more on content than production.
You did say more on content than on production.
Yeah, we discussed especially the moderator role, that you might need two moderators, one for the online viewers and one for the physical audience, which is a step up compared to old days.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. We're going to discuss that later.
That's good. We have just that question to talk about. In answer to the question, does it surprise me? No, it doesn't. But actually, I'm encouraged by it, because we're going to be looking at how the venue can play a part in the overall success. But at the same time, it may not be the biggest area of considered challenge in terms of change and adaptation. So we'll look at that and we'll eke out some of the areas that we feel the venue could actually contribute to the overall success, Mike. And we'll focus a bit more of our time on the areas that are coming through, certainly on production and content, because we believe that if you're flagging them in terms of having the biggest change, then potentially we've got to overcome and help our audience become the most comfortable with what that change looks like.
Yeah, Mark, I think an interesting comment that I pick up on the chat box is in one group it was discussed that actually tech is a venue. How would you respond to that?
Well, we'll be looking at how the differences, particularly when we get into the cost area, of how a venue can contribute to the technology solution quite critically, from both the infrastructure and also the hardware, the technology that's on site. And of course, that can be a balance that helps a meeting professional engage less in shipping in technology and the associated costs with that. But it is a fine balance. You know, you can't do everything with a venue and no virtual production. So we'll be touching on that, but the venue can certainly play a part.
Okay, good. All right, so having said that, let's see what the general context is, the background against which we are having to function under these extraordinary circumstances. It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night. I should be sleeping like a log, but when I get onto you, I find a thing that you do will make me feel all right. It's a hard day's night indeed, with the current circumstances, isn't it? Let's see what we can do with that in terms of some meaning. Mark, let's do the VUCA slides. Who's ever heard of VUCA? And I'll quickly scroll down. If you've ever heard of the acronym VUCA, could you raise your hands, and I'll have a look if I can see as many people as possible, either raising their hands or not. You've heard one person, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and one thumbs up, which probably means you've heard of it. That's good. Okay. Yeah, so about 20% just quickly of you have heard about VUCA. So I'm going to make a distinction between VUCA as it was before and super VUCA, which has become now, and how VUCA in fact is also the acronym of a potential solution. So what the V in VUCA, the first one, stands for, Mark, I'm counting on you to keep up with me, volatile. The world has become increasingly volatile. Things change very quickly. As a result of that, the first U, we can see that anything that surrounds us has become more uncertain. The uncertainty is rampant already in the world before 2019. Next slide, Mark, please. Yeah. Volatile is the high rate of change. Uncertainty is the U in VUCA, and it translates into having difficulty making the right choices. That is further complicated. Next slide. Because we don't know often what future outcomes could be. The world is more uncertain, is less predictable. The world is also infinitely more complex than it used to be. We can't make much sense of many things that happen. Complexity is the key in having great difficulty in making decisions. And then finally, what about meaning? It seems as if everything that's happening could have multiple meanings. The world is full of ambiguity. As I said, this was already the case before 2019. Now things have turned into the second degree of all of this. The second V of VUCA, which is now becoming super VUCA, in fact stands for vibrant. Because yes, I didn't mention my grandson by chance at the start. The world is vibrant. Many things are changing. Change is incredibly fast. We can't even keep up with all of the changes, for instance, in platforms which are taking place. So in Super VUCA, the V is, next slide, is for vibrant. The second U is for unreal. Next slide again. It's almost impossible to believe what we have seen happening in the past year. The pace of change, the novelty of everything that we have had to deal with. Yes, you could see it slightly coming, but the degree has been just unprecedented. The second C is for crazy. I mean, this world really seems to be out of sync with anything. We can't make much sense of it. There's no consistency. So many things seem to be totally irrational. And all of that is leaving us gasping for breath. It's astonishing what is happening. It's astonishing or astounding, which is the last A for the super VUCA world. Everybody has had to change so many of our habits, including in organizations. The whole way in which we work has changed. Now, why do we think that looking at multi-location meetings makes sense under these circumstances? And here is another way of looking at VUCA. The first V for what you need under these circumstances is you need to have a vision. So if we could have the next slide, Mark, vision for finding out what you need to do. You need to understand where you want to go before you can go. So all organizations need to develop vision. So if you click again, we'll get those on the right side or hand side. The second is, in spite of all the uncertainty and the unrealness of things, we need to make a really hard effort to understand what is going on. Once we do that, we get clarity of where we want to go. And within the meetings business, evermore we need to show the highest levels of agility possible. Multi-locations, you can only do it if you develop a vision of what you want your meetings to achieve, if you have an understanding of your participants and what they need. if you have clarity on the purpose of your organization with that meeting, and if you have the agility to do things radically differently from what you used to be doing in the past. So VUCA turns into Super VUCA, and it turns into the solution.
Mike, I really like Super VUCA, and you introduced me to it originally when we were prepping for this. VUCA, I'd heard of it, had been talked about in relation to some of the decisions we've made in our association over the last 2 or 3 years. But what I really like about Super VUCA is it just screamed out to me permission to be really brave. And you know, nothing that we do today in regards to looking for these alternative approaches to getting people together are off the table. We have permission to be really brave, and our industry will learn from that. Last year, there'd have been approaches to staging our meetings, conferences that we would just never have crossed the line. Too risky, risks diluting our in-person attendance, whatever it might be. What's really different, and why I think Super VUCA has even more relevance today, is that you talked about it in terms of permission to run multi-location meetings. The big difference is that in the past, in economies, we saw meetings stop when there was a shockwave through them. We saw a return to regional meetings first, smaller meetings, then to national, then to global. With the technology footprint and our ability and the brave approach that our industry's taken because of the depth of the shock, we have permission to bring those global meetings back together, but with that regional risk level, you know, by adapting the first stage. And that's what excites me the most about this concept as we go into 2021. So I'm a firm believer at this stage in Super VUCA. I think it's a great approach.
Yeah, yeah. If you put in brave, it becomes VUCA, Mark. It doesn't sound really good. And for those of you who speak Spanish or Italian, you know why this really wouldn't be a good word. So let's stick to VUCA, and we'll add the B for bravery in our minds. Okay, so of course you can't have meetings without content. There's the 3 basic things about meetings. You have meetings for a reason. You have meetings with participants, and the meeting always has to be about something. So let's focus on content, and we're going to focus on content not all that long because it didn't come out as one of the main things, but in the next part, which is 4th session of this entire event. Let's see if we can make sense of that. Try to see it my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can't go on? Why you see it your way? Run the risk of knowing that our love may soon be gone. We can work it out. We can work it out. So if you look at content, I was going to do a group session on this because content hasn't come out as one of the main things that worry our participants. Let's do that really shortly, and let's use the chat box again. So let's say on a scale from 1 to 10, where let's see if I can use my entire screen here. On a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 means there is no difference at all, and 10 means it is now totally different. Managing content nowadays compared to previously, how different do you think it is? So 1 is no difference at all, 10 is totally different. So type that up in the chat box, please, just the 1 number. Okay, well, you've got an interesting outlier to begin with in Martin, number 1. And then we're seeing some extremes going the other way. Content is really going to be turned upside down, and a couple of maybe I think it can be, and maybe those middle of the road sort of predictions might be linked to that vision of the goals might stay the same, so therefore the content may stay the same. I don't know. Don't want to speak for our participants, Mike, but that could be a reason why we sit in the middle. Yeah, well, I'm fascinated, of course, and if they could come in just briefly to explain, Abid, Evelyn, and Martin. Clearly, there is a common view in your stables, so to say. So, Evelyn, could you explain why you chose one?
Content is you compare content in 2019 versus 2020, right, Mike?
Yeah.
How it was, yeah. I think there's no difference. Content always has to be interesting, attractive, easy to digest, short, whatever. So I've not seen in the production that we did in the virtual multi-hub meetings and physical events over the years. We have not seen any major shifts between last year and this new era.
Yeah. Thanks.
I just quickly want to add that I looked at this as from a maybe too narrow vision, which is content is like the presentations, the speakers and the presentations. And I agree with Evelyn that they always were important and we never paid enough attention to them. Equally now, we are doing, the easy things sometimes and they're still very important. So I don't think it's changed. That's why I give it a 1.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for those explanations. I tend to agree that as such, content hasn't changed. As I said earlier on, if you look at meetings, they have to be about something. They're always about something. So you need to deal with content. So as such, the importance of content hasn't changed. But what has changed is, of course, the ways in which you can deal with it. And in that respect, I must be honest, I welcome this crisis for the meetings business. Because I think we've been going on in default mode for much too long, and we were at serious risk of being found out as the emperor without clothes. The way in which we have to rethink meetings as a form of communication, to me, is a very welcome breathing pause for the whole industry. We really need to look again at why do people want meetings? What is it that they want to get out of them? And I know, Martin, I see you nodding because you happen to be one of the people I see in this little bit of the screen, and we think very much alike, of course, in this sense. There's been going on so much default doing things the way they've always been done without thinking through what is the purpose, why do we want this content to present it to people, what do we want the role of the people who own this content to be. Why have we always stuck to speakers and presenters? While we've known for 50 years from educational science that classroom presentations are an extremely ineffective way of getting information across to people. How come primary school teachers know this, but people in the meetings industry still continue to do things the old way? Now we can't, because nobody is ever going to sit again for an hour to watch a monologue unless it is Bill Clinton in front of a screen, right? So we have to rethink all of this. And I think that's really good. It comes at a good moment. We now have the opportunity to look at the meetings differently. With regard to what multi-location meetings add in that respect, because that's of course what we're here for today, is an infinity of new formats in dealing with your content. You can have one speaker in one place, another speaker in another place. You can have them talk to one another through the multi-pod connection. You can have groups of people sitting in different places, having different roles in having a relay function in working on content. You can give teams different kinds of assignments in different spaces and compare what they have produced across the different locations. You can work with different time zones who have different tasks. You can do 24-hour meetings repeatedly if you wanted to, dividing up your participants, for instance, in 6 time zones. Some people go to sleep, they find the next result of work done in another place. I mean, there's so much more that we can do. Let me give you just one brief example. Last week, we did a meeting where for the first time we were in a destination and people could visit 4 sites in that destination within 30 minutes. Try do that if you have a physical meeting. Yeah, of course, you can do four sites in a village with 100 inhabitants, but you can't in a city with 5 million people. You can do that virtually. So let's rethink the whole concept of meeting, and let's go back to some basics and make sure we get that right first.
So Mike, as we head into the first interval to give everybody an opportunity to get a cup of coffee, I'm going to both ask a question of you and the audience related to what you and certainly Martin had just shared as well, which is, whilst the content may not have changed, has the opportunity to elevate the quality of the content become just that, an opportunity in this new world? Can we get richer content or richer contributors as a result of the new ways of delivering it? Because in the past, I admit to only ever considering keynote speakers or serious panelist speakers if they could make it to my conference. And if they couldn't, then you discounted them. So a question for all. Content remains the same, but could it be richer in these new multi-location, hybrid or virtual formats?
Okay, so we would like to give everybody the opportunity for 5 minutes now to get up, stretch your legs, switch off your microphones for a second, exactly 5 minutes. It's 11:51, so we would expect everybody to be back by 11:56. Meanwhile, if you want to, please type up any questions you have on what we have delivered so far, Mark and me, in the chat box. And when we're all going to be back, Mark and me are going to answer those questions to the best of our abilities. So time for a brief break, 5 minutes, 11:56. We hope to see all of you back here. Bye for now.
Oh yeah, tell you something, I think you understand. When I tell you something, I wanna hold you hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. Oh please, say to me, you let me be your man. And please, say to me, you let me hold your hand. You let me hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. And when I touch you, I feel happy inside. It's such a feeling that my love I can't hide. I can't hide. Hey, you got that something. I think you understand. When I feel that something, I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. And when I touch you, I feel happy inside. It's such a feeling that my love I can't hide. I can't hide. I can't hide. Yeah, you got that something. I think you understand. When I feel that something, I wanna hold your hand. 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 Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Time. Wonderful. Thank you.
Welcome back to everybody. I hope you've had a chance to refill your mugs, your cups, maybe even glasses. It's always 6 o'clock somewhere in the world. You will notice that we've put up some schedules of programs that continue for the remainder of this year and into next year for both MPI Belgium and MPI Scandinavia. Those are not the full programs. We have a lot of content for next year and hopefully far more of these kinds of collaborative sessions as well. For those of you who are not members of MPI, we urge you come and join us. We've got some very full programs for next year, and you'll find that as we emerge from the current crisis that we in fact can provide a lot of education for you, a great source of networking and support amongst your peer group. So please give it a thought. Mike and Mark, back to you.
Thank you very much, Philip. We're delighted to be back.
Right, we've got a couple of questions. An interesting question is about kinesthetic learning and how you can deal with that with kinesthetic learning styles online. 2 points on that. One is part of the question has already been answered by Evelyn from Abbott, which is of course that if you do a multi-location meeting, people are physically in location, so you can help them move around and learn kinesthetically there. So that's one answer. The other answer more in general about online is of course the new default about online is that you're nailed to your chair and you have to sit in front of your screen. Of course, that's not true. You can easily ask people to do things and learn by designing that learning appropriately and asking them just to leave and do something. For instance, it's very easy to just stand up, walk away, pick up something. For instance, I just happen to have found this towel, and now this towel can be used for learning if I want to, right? It happens to be next to me where I am, but this is something that we never do because we feel that the new default is we have to sit behind our screens. Well, we don't. So that's a solution for kinesthetic learning. Ask people to go away and do something physically. Then you obviously also have to ask them to come back. The second question is that I'd like to address here, which is by Anne. What are the key differences you have to remember when you do multi-hub compared to other types of meetings? Well, I think for all virtual meetings, and I consider multi-hub as one of the forms, new forms, which are partly virtual, one of the big things is how do you connect people through a screen? And that requires very specific efforts. It requires some real design work to make sure that everybody who is not physically connected still gets the feeling that they are one way or another connected. There's lots of ways in which you can do that by building in rituals. The main thing is, in general, give people some kind of physical experience, even though they are in different places. The fact that you get the feeling, even through the screen, that you are going through a similar experience is a vital way of making them feel that they are in the same space, mental space. So how do you create that mental space? That would be my answer as a designer. Mark, anything to add to those?
Only that I really like the point that was made in regards to keynotes, and I'm just trying to think. Evelyn made the point that great speakers and moderators can participate more easily in an event when they can stay at home. And we'll be looking at that both in terms of costs, but also I've seen some really great sort of backdrops and settings, and it's much aligned to what you've been talking about there, Mike, you know, the visual props, the settings. So there is potentially more that you can achieve by connecting with somebody in a different destination or a different setting that can either resonate around the theme of that. Think about social responsibility and having a keynote that is talking, rather than bringing a photographer who has traveled the world as an explorer onto your stage. What about if they're halfway up a mountain? And on that point, I'm going to use it as a beautiful segue, because the Herdwick sheep from the Lake District in England will be good examples of mountaineers. They're probably one of the best animals that I know for being able to climb a mountain.
And we're going to go into our next session. I've got to admit it's getting better, a little better all the time. I have to admit it's getting better, a little better since you've been mine. Getting so much better all the time. It's getting better all the time. Better, better, better. It's getting better all the time. Better, better, better. Getting so much better all the time.
Mike,
So-
you hit high notes that Lady Gaga just couldn't only dream about hitting. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. So now we're going to go into our next stage, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. And interestingly, one of those questions was that which came out, I think, before in the chat box earlier on today. Do you need a facilitator for the virtual attendee if you've got those included in your multi-pod, multiple live events? How critical is it?
Yeah, vital, because as a facilitator, you live in the moment as a facilitator or as a moderator. So if you're with a group of people, you have to give them your undivided attention. And you have to be, you know, some kind of schizophrenic mastermind in order to be able to really give all your attention to this one group of people, and at the same time being able to keep an eye on the chat box and make sure that the virtual attendees get their just attention as well. So you need to separate out those two roles.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to move straight into the second question now then, one that was born out of our very own design of our conference next year, which is taking place over 5 locations. Do you need a master facilitator? If you've got a facilitator in each of your live areas, do you need a grand facilitator? And if so, again, why is that important?
Yeah, so again, I do think it is important because and actually for the same reason, because the facilitators in the locations, they have to focus on their group and they have to focus on the process which their group is going through. And they can't at the same time coordinate what's happening between the different groups. So you absolutely do need one person overseeing the total required process and the outcome that is supposed to produce in the course of the meeting, picking up on what comes in from the various locations. And I wouldn't want one of the people in one of the locations to have that double role, because if they have that double role, they can't focus fully on the process and the participants in their location.
Well, you've just covered my third question beautifully, which is that the role that they, or the roles that they are undertaking. But I'll pull on that out a little bit further to say the master facilitator then has a role in coaching and supporting and preparing the live location facilitators as well prior to the event, I guess. So there's an extra step.
Yeah, that's an extra step to take. You need to coordinate your content well. If you coordinate your content well, it means that you have to coordinate the process which is going to take place in each of the different locations, need to be coordinated well so that you get the total outcome that is relevant to everybody.
Great. Now, the concept of bringing people together live is one which you're collaborating face to face, and and you're networking, building relationships. That's what we all want to return to. So if we're doing that in 2, 3, 4, 5 locations, does that serve the only purpose, or is there an importance to the collaboration being effective between participants in different live locations? Talk a little bit about that if you can, Mike, and how facilitation plays a role in that.
Yeah. So, of course, one of the interesting options that you have all of a sudden is now that you are in one meeting, but you can offer people in different locations, different experiences. And you can have those people reporting back on those experiences to the people who are somewhere else. That's new. Well, to some extent, it's new. You could do this in parallel sessions, but you can't create the huge difference that you can create in multi-location meetings. Because the whole setting is different, the weather is different, the climate is different, it smells differently. especially if you're talking about locations in really different parts of the world. So again, this is an additional opportunity, which is new. We haven't done a lot of experimentation with it yet, so we still need to find out what it can mean, but it obviously, for my work as a designer, it's a great new thing that I can start using. If you have those different experiences, once again, you need to make sure that that fits the flow of what you want to achieve, and therefore it requires good facilitation, professional facilitation and moderation to make sure that it leads to something, because just having an experience is an empty thing. It doesn't mean anything unless you give it its just space, its just meaning within the whole process that everybody's going through. And in that respect, I think one thing that I've really found for which it is absolutely vital to have professional facilitation and moderation in any kind of screen connected meeting is that you miss so many of the non-verbal, the physical pointers that normally you would have. You know, suppose, as often happens, unfortunately, in common meetings, somebody's almost asleep, right? Questions are coming, you're almost asleep. Normally, you'd be sitting in a room, light goes on, and you know, oh, questions are coming. But now you're sitting at home, and you've got your video switched off, and questions are coming. How do you know? You missed the physical pointer. How do you know that everybody's getting up and now moving out to go somewhere else? All of those, I would say non-physical pointers that we have when we are present somewhere live are absent. And therefore you need even more specific, even better facilitation and moderation, very detailed on what's happening and taking people in small steps through the process.
It feels and sounds like it's more facilitation than moderation from what you're talking about, Mike, and it's a critical part. Now, you've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time in what you've demonstrated, what you've talked about there. I know that firsthand because of our own event. I'll leave everybody with one tip that Mike has helped us with. So in creating four regional facilitators for our own event, we can't afford to go out and hire 4 facilitators. So we have Mike as a master facilitator and Mind Meeting, both in terms of helping us design the program, the theme, the content, but Mike, we've engaged to train the 4 volunteers at the regional locations who want, from a personal development perspective, to be better facilitators. So our volunteers get a development opportunity. I'm really excited by not only that approach, but also the interest we've had from the members of our association to do that and be trained by Mike, because they've seen him, they know he's a grandmaster when it comes to that. So just one tip, which is linked to both the quality of what you'll get, but also reducing costs where they're not necessary. But Mike, thank you for that. Just before we move on, Philip, was there anything else in the chat box or MyBrit that you'd like to pull out and ask Mike about facilitation moderation before we move on?
I think not at this point. I think people are just eager to learn even more tips from you both, Mark and Mike.
Okay, great. Well, so Mike, I think now we move on to the next part of our session.
Yeah, let's look at one of the things that potentially could really spoil your party. I don't want to spoil the party, so I'll go. I would hate my disappointment to show. There's nothing for me here, so I will disappear. If she turns up while I'm gone, please let me know.
I never knew that song, but now I do. You learn something every day with the Beatles. Mike, thank you very much. So looking differently through, or looking at your events through a different lens, that's becoming really apparent in what we're starting to talk about. And we've got more to go into, certainly from a venue perspective as well. But I'm going to take a lead out of your book. And in fact, if you can do that, I'm going to use my visual today, which of course the Zoom background loves playing tricks with you. So let me just take off Zoom background for one moment so this really works well. Unfortunately, though, you will see the state of my office. which is not as exciting as a multi-pod background, but let's go.
But the good thing about this, Mark, is now all of a sudden we can see everybody for a minute, which is really nice. Hi, everyone.
That's good.
I was just scrolling up and down and seeing some of the faces as I moved along, but now we can
Let
see
me give you that.
everyone.
Let me give you that moment to do that.
Thanks.
But and now I'll welcome everybody back if that's okay, and hopefully that works and you can see me and you can see the slide now. But more importantly, you can see my shopping list, my visual cue that we've got here. And number one, as we look through the different lens, what's on the top of my shopping list? Well, number one, of course, is choosing the right platform and remembering your goals. So, you know, we will talk about it in a little more detail. The first question we know we're always asked is, what is the platform that we should be using? And the answer to that is, what are your goals? What is your content? What is your engagement flow? Because so many platforms we've learned will really resonate and bring that out. So think carefully and make sure the production partner that you're working with, the experts on that side, are asking you the right questions. So I'm just going to put my tick in that area. So let's make sure we focus on not choosing the best platform, but the right platform for each and every event. The second one I'm going to have is, let's have a virtual production plan and be thinking about that 6+ weeks out, ideally more. It takes time. You've already started to hear today that, that there's more to do in advance. To have a smooth broadcast like the one that you're experiencing today, with absolutely no technical hitches, of course, but there's more to be done in that regard. So don't leave it to the last moment. We're certainly hearing from our production partners that are putting on hybrid meetings, virtual meetings, multi-pod meetings, multi-hub meetings, that sometimes the client's leaving it too late, and that's critical. It's like, you know, the proof is in the pudding in terms of the ingredients that you prepare in advance. The second one is, you've got to confirm that video sharing direction. It's one of the first things you're going to be asked by a good production partner, is, where do you want the content flow? Are you sending information? Are you looking for feedback? Do you want virtual exhibition areas that have engagement and not just information sharing? So, you know, make sure you've got that really crystal clear in your own mind with your speakers, with your design and your architects. My next one, ticked already, is organised rehearsals. My shopping list here, when we ran our own virtual conference and flipped that in May 2020 from a live event in Dallas to a 4-day virtual conference, I could not believe how much rehearsal time was needed. And it's really important for everyone to be comfortable, to have your fail-safes in there as well. So build it in. Build in more than you think you will need, and I bet you will do it, because practice is really important for everybody, particularly when you're involving people who are not familiar with delivering in this style. Have yourself a really good platform testing schedule, because the downside of using different platforms, because they offer different interactions or different ways of working, is your audience are using different platforms as well. And we've learned that, you know, that people can have issues. As well as having that, make sure you've got a really robust AV support team in place to be able to help your attendees should they have issues, because the last thing you need is lots of unanswered problems in your chat box. So have a really good team there that are on top of that. And again, it just amplifies the quality of your overall brand, product, and broadcast. Post-event content sharing, it's getting down to the bottom of the list, but it is not there because it's not important. There is so much content now that we are quality content, better content that we're getting at the live event. Actually, the need to be at an event live now is less important than it's ever been. And I've attended a number of conferences the day after, the hour after, the week after, and because of the way they're broadcast, because of the quality, I haven't felt like I've missed out on on something there. So do think about how you're going to communicate that. The next one gets a little bit interesting for me, and we'll be looking at the venues, but have a internet redundancy plan. So much at your live locations now is dependent on there being good internet infrastructure. Whilst a venue may never have gone down, you need to have a good redundancy plan should you get interruption there. Now that can both be provided by a good venue, but also it can be brought in by a good production and AV team to have that backup for you, because it's more critical than ever. Moderation can be an anchor for the quality. Again, you've got, like any showtime, you've got a window to be able to get the best out of the individuals. And that's going to require sometimes great facilitation, but also good moderation. I'm always open to Mike cutting me off and saying, let's move on to the next one, because he's ready. He knows that the key points have come out. So having good quality moderation at the live locations is really key. And then the last one really does play into the venue lead part. Have a good client pod leader. Those pods, those hubs, those live locations, it's critical. You get everybody back into the room on time, everybody prepped. It's no longer, you can no longer start the session when everybody's sat down, put their coffee down and started to be quiet. It's got to happen in several locations, on the minute, on the second that you've identified. You need good pod leaders and good volunteers. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. So that's my shopping list. Some of the key points that I think that everyone should cover. It's going to be bigger for all of you, but that's just some of the key takeaways.
Yep.
Mike.
Many thanks, Mark, for that. And this is all that you have contributed now about production. I think the other thing that we would want to discuss, but let's do that relatively briefly, is about venue. Venue wasn't mentioned as one of the main changes for people in the chat box earlier on. So I suggest we skip the discussion here in little groups that we had originally planned, also in the interest of time. And as you just said, I'm allowed to overrule you, so I'm doing that herewith. But let's ask everybody, just as a quick bit of input with regard to venues. How can they be your best friend? Ooh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends.
I thank you for the intro to that.
Friends. Yeah, friends for venues. What is your most important expectation? Can you type that up in the chat box, please, from a venue? One thing that you think this they really have to deliver.
And it can be blue sky thinking. It could be what you'd like a venue to offer that you don't currently maybe have the confidence that they're prepared for. And as we go through this, as you're putting those areas in, I'll take the opportunity to recommend that all of you take a look at the multi-pod page on the IACC website and go straight to the venue pledge area, because I think that reinforces what we're about to discuss really well. What you should expect from a really good venue partner to be that layer of the onion that means that they're in sync with all of the others. It's more of a marriage now of the client, the speakers, the attendees, the production partner, the technology partner, and the venue team and facilities than maybe it was prior to 2020. What are we seeing, Mike, in terms of the...
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, Mark, because we have a first batch of answers to this question, which are all about sufficient internet capability. So, you know, good bandwidth, simply, so that you don't run into trouble there. And then that broadens out to simply more good equipment. So hybrid equipment, and even just the certainty that the venues would have the right suppliers for that. And then there's one person who has answered support and knowledge for actually designing the program.
Well, Well, let me pick up on the technology one to start with, because I think that's critical. And again, it lends itself to a balance between cost saving and getting it right. We're very lucky within the IACC venues. IACC, for those of you who know us, represent meetings focused venues that have equipped and purpose-built meeting spaces. And in the majority of times, that's built-in technology, because those rooms are only used for meetings and conferences. So the level of what they've got built in and supported locally is generally higher than a big box hotel, which is shipping it in each and every time. So a good production partner will be willing to work with the venue to say, what hardware have you got in place? What is the environment that you provide, acoustics and lighting wise? And you know, where can we add to that to create the right technology infrastructure? And that includes the infrastructure as it relates to the internet as well. It's not just about having high-speed internet. As you'll see if you look at the venue pledge on the IACC website, there's a lot more that I'm not familiar with that you need to make sure you have in place. So that can help bring the costs down if you're not having to create everything from zero with each of your venue partners. Also bear in mind the fact that if you're doing multiple regions, you might have an event that was once 600 people that only really fitted in a larger event where you did have to create everything from scratch, to now being smaller events of less than 100, where you can go to some of those venues that are more capable and prepared to be able to do it. But it's not just about technology. It's also about the attitude of the venue in the lead up to it. And I'll throw out some examples of that. Your conference planning team and your events team at the venue should be equally aware of the concept of a multi-location meeting and what that means and what role they're playing. They should have the ability to not only be prepared for more preparation meetings, the rehearsals, but also the meetings where all of the venues are coming together. One of them may take the role of being the principal liaison with the meeting organizer on, for instance, a timetable, and then willing to share with their colleagues at the other venues so they take the burden away from the meeting organizer. So the point I'm making here is that if they are willing to make this work and not act in their own bubble, then you know, just interested in their own venue, then they will become a much better partner. Even small things Mike mentioned as well, you can connect the theme of an event by even having the same menu at lunchtime, having the same table decorations, having the same setups, all of these small things. Imagine coming back after lunch and your keynote comes on and goes, wow, wasn't, you know, that Japanese chicken dish absolutely incredible? And then all of a sudden everybody realizes we've all had the same dish. You know, little things like that are stitching people together across the locations. The lighting and the acoustic side are really important. And, you know, let's just pick up one or two of those. The room that you choose within the meeting venue can mean the difference between these two here. Again, your production team are there to make sure, and company you're working with, that works really well. But it's no good going to a production team with a decision already made on a meeting room in a venue that's going to make it really tough for them to be able to create good, crisp images. So think about this at the venue sourcing stage, and think about the order of which you're engaging. Maybe your production partner comes in first, then you get to the venues, and you can see some of the key points in regards to that. Acoustics, massively important. Actually, we're lucky in this environment. Mike and I are in, you know, kind of sound bubbles of private rooms, etc. But we know how that changes in live environments, particularly if there's 100 people in the room as well with us. So there's a lot to consider. And you should be asking your venue, why are you choosing that room? You know, how, you know, what other noises are there, service corridors, HVAC noises as well, so that you measure the actual effectiveness of a meeting room within a venue on very different points than you would do normally. In the past, you might be looking at what a great view that this room's got, what great furniture, what great, you know, yes, they might still be important, but these are more important in terms of the effectiveness of the meeting.
Great, thanks, Mark. And you already hinted at what's going to be our last theme for the session: money. Can't buy me love. Love can't buy me love. I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if it makes you feel alright. I'll get you anything, my friend, if it makes you feel alright. 'Cause I don't care too much for money. For money can't buy me love, can't buy me love. Love can't buy me love. Love. So, is it going to cost more or less? Please go to Slido and type up any ideas that you have in 1, maximum 2 words, and add a plus or a minus if you think that cost item is going to be higher or lower if you do a multi-location meeting. Please use Slido, and we've already seen that 2 people think that time for planning is more, going to cost more. Moderators and facilitators are going to cost more. Yes, good.
And if you agree with something that's already up there, type it exactly the same again, and that'll get a bit bigger in the wonderful Slido word cloud concept. But some for me to throw it there for you as well, because there are lots of variables. Is the speaker cost going to be different, and maybe even the quality? Is the production cost going to be different? Staff or volunteers, they're going to be higher. I think I saw staff in there. Cost per attendee, that's an interesting one, because if your audience is so much bigger because of this new platform, then it doesn't really matter if the event costs more. So if you have got a much stronger engagement, or it's relative is the point I'm making. Travel for staff, travel for attendees, time dedicated to attending. Think about that time it takes to get to an event and come away from an event and recover from an event. If you are going to a regional location as opposed to from one end of the country to the next. Networking, plus or minus in terms of cost. Food and beverage, there are so many parts. Mike, what are we starting to see come through?
Yeah, obviously a decreased cost of travel is the main thing.
Yeah.
Interesting that we're getting some good support for lower CO2 emissions, which is now, these 2 are the biggest ones in the center of the word cloud, which means that these have gained the most consensus from other people. We're seeing quite a few cost items going up, like production cost, cost per participant goes up, tech, testing, moderators, facilitators, testing and planning. But we also see less hotel costs.
Yeah.
And registration fees going down though.
That's really interesting to see, because sometimes the first thought is that the hotel costs are going to go up because you've got more hotels, more venues. But actually, if you're working on a per delegate, day delegate rate, it doesn't really matter, although there might be other associated costs. The 2 biggest ones there for me are really interesting and powerful because they can have the largest impact to cost. So yes, your production, your pre-planning, maybe, your testing may be a higher cost. Of course, you're putting more energy into that, it's more important, but you have got some significant factors that are coming down and should be part of the overall package of A, creating your budget, but B, selling it to your stakeholders as well. Multi-location meetings have an incredible opportunity to be able to engage a much wider audience and reduce travel, reduce costs, reduce time spent, but still give important elements to face-to-face meetings. Mike, we're going to need to move on. I know there's 1 or 2 still moving in here, but thank you to all for sharing. I'm going to move into the next part, the closing part of our session now.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be the witnesses of a very first. We're going to do something at the end now to close off. We were happy to take any further questions from you, but not during the session. Afterwards, with great pleasure. Please write to Mark or me. We're easy to find. if you have other questions that you would like to ask us. But we're now going to do, for the first time ever, an MPI sing-along, a virtual MPI sing-along with only amateurs. You may have had sound vision or something like that in the past. Now you're going to have MPI board member singing for the first time in public, on stage, on screen. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Hybrid Standard.
One, 2, 3, 4. Can I have a little more? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I love you. A, B, C, D. Can I bring my friend T? E, F, G, H, I, J. I love you.
Boom, ba-boom, sail the ship. Boom, ba-boom, chop the tree. Boom, ba-boom, skip the rope. Boom, ba-boom, look at me.
And now everybody, join us.
All together now.
Together now.
All together now.
Together now.
All together now. All together now. All together now. All together now. All together now. All together now. All together now. All together now. All together now. All together now.
And that's also, you know what, when we try something, we fail, but that's the way of moving on. And that's a learning process also, all the way from Taiwan, from London, Belgium, Scandinavia. I mean, it's a great team effort, like all meetings should be.
My Brit, you didn't fail. That was wonderful. Thank you for that. Well tried.
I learned something new again today.
Thank you also to Mike and Mark. I think it's been a very interesting session today. Just to let you know that we will follow this up in the new year. At the first opportunity, we will follow this up with a real live in-location event where we can actually learn the practical issues of putting that together. And I think that the concept has really built the foundation for that. We really look forward then to putting this into practice. It's an area that many of us have very little experience of. I know some of you out there do. It's a very complex area, and it's one that, again, that takes our skill pool to a much higher level again. So I think it's great to start learning this stuff, and we really look forward to putting it into practice. So again, thank you to everybody. Maj-Britt, Mark, Mike, thank you for everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again at the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Happy Christmas, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.